Can everyone hear me okay? First of all, thanks so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. First year at ISMB, but I see a lot of familiar faces, so it's a great talk. I'm Jared Rozowsky. I'm a technical program manager at Valsera. I specialize in working with our government, academic, and nonprofit institutions to use our platforms. Today I'll be talking about CAVATICA. I then use that experience to lead product development internally with our product and engineering teams, and then I collaborate with Global Alliance for Genomics and Health to bring those use cases and develop global standards. Before joining Valsera, which was called Seven Bridges at the time, I completed my PhD at the University of Florida. I want to set the stage and give an example of one of my experiments that may sound familiar to you. So I was studying vascular disease and understanding the biological drivers of vein adaptions after AVF surgery, which was used for dialysis access. If you're in the vascular world, I'm happy to chat with you later. But we had switched from microarrays to next-gen sequencing. I was in charge of leading this initiative, and so I spent many months collecting samples, processing those in the lab, sent them off to sequencing. That took several weeks. They then uploaded that data onto online storage, which I then had to download onto my institutional storage, which took another several weeks. And then after working with IT to install all of the packages I needed, I was finally ready to do data analysis. Now imagine a world where data from all kinds of samples and specimens have already been processed, collected, and made available to you, harmonized with each other, so that you can then go and do data discovery and analysis in a matter of minutes to hours rather than months to years. And with the new NIH data management sharing policies, we're becoming closer to that being a reality. Two of the initiatives that I'm going to highlight today are Include and Kids First, and they're really pushing the boundaries of making that data available and usable so that we can move forward and impact patients' lives and impact people. So Include is focused on Down syndrome and the co-occurring conditions of it. Kids First is focused more on childhood cancer and congenital disease. So participants or people that are born with congenital disease are significantly more likely to develop childhood cancers. And those with Down syndrome are actually protected from solid tumors, but are more prone to liquid tumors, as well as other conditions that they see and experience throughout their life. Together, these two provide harmonized data. Children's Hospital of Philadelphia leads an initiative where they process all of the data and make it available to you so that you can find and analyze that for your own research. Together with CAVATICA, it builds a whole ecosystem where you can now go and find the data that you're interested in and leverage CAVATICA, which is a trusted research environment, to use the cloud for your analysis, sharing, and then collaboration as well. And really, they're trying to push that speed of actionable insights where we can then help participants. And that's what I love about working with these, is that they're very mission driven, looking at what infrastructure, what processes can we improve upon to really impact people's lives. Leveraging the cloud is admittedly a relatively new way of doing research. So the traditional way, which I experienced when I was in the lab, was downloading data, whether it's public data or my own data, downloading it locally, which is not really data sharing, it's more data copying. And then at my institution, I leveraged the big infrastructure that we had, which was fixed compute and required our own individual security implementation. On the cloud, it's really data sharing where we are bringing the people and bringing the resources to where the data lives. So we're not making copies of that. We're using the one true copy that exists. We're using cloud infrastructure, which is elastic, both in compute and storage. So we can only use what we need. And then it has centralized security implications. And those security implications are very important, especially when we talk about NIH and controlled access data. So as of this year, the NIH genomic data sharing guidelines got a bit more strict on data repositories and data consumers about what environments we can use controlled access data in. Specifically, you have to meet these NIST requirements, whether you're sharing data, you're local, or you're on the cloud. And the benefit of CAVATICA to the researchers and to the research population is that we meet all of these requirements already. So we're FedRAMP moderate, we're FSMA compliant, and have several ISO certifications as well. And speaking of security and trust, CAVATICA has been part of NCPI, which Tanya talked about a little bit, so I won't go too far into, but we actually built 3 of these NIH trusted environments. CAVATICA was built in collaboration with Kids First back in 2017. Cancer Genomics Cloud is part of the NCI Cancer Research Data Commons, and then Biodata Catalyst also has a platform called Biodata Catalyst powered by 7 Bridges. And all of these interoperate with each other, as well as the other 2 partners that are part of NCPI, so Anvil and the National Library of Medicine, NCBI. The power of interoperability really allows us to use data on our platform for analysis. So I've talked about including Kids First. You can go to their data repositories, data hubs, find data that you're interested in, and using symbolic links that are data repository service coming out of the GA4GH standards, use symbolic links to bring them to CAVATICA. So we're not copying data, we're just linking the data to make it available. And then when I do that analysis, it's really analyzing data where it lives. But not only for including Kids First, we also have the 4 data repositories I talked about for NCPI, but we also have direct integration with Synapse. So Luca and I saw Sushil were here. You can go to Synapse or any of their portals, find data, and use the same DRS linkage to add that data to your CAVATICA workspace and do your analysis there. So really leveraging the latest in interoperability coming out of GA4GH. And of course, all of these are controlled data repositories. So we use the latest in AuthNZ as well. Some of them are in RAS already. Some of them are undergoing RAS implementation to leverage that. And then some of them have their own authorization mechanisms that we can use to add data to our workspace. And then of course you can bring your own data. So we see a lot of researchers bringing their own data to these environments just to leverage the tools that are available and not necessarily the data and the interoperability that we provide. So once you have data in your workspace, what can you then do? Pretty much what you would want to do in your local environment. So you can run Jupyter Lab or RStudio. We have TensorFlow if you're using ML and AI. And really just, it creates the same environment, visual interface that you would use, but it leverages cloud resources instead. So you can choose what type of instance you need, whether you need CPUs, GPUs, and how much you need for that. We also have workflow executors. So we were part of the original implementation of the common workflow language last year. And over the past few years, we've recognized Nextflow as a big need for the community. So we've implemented a Nextflow executor. You can now go to our platform and find hundreds of readily available tools and workflows that you can use for your data. You can also bring your own tools and workflows and use the workflow editor that we have on our platform if you need to modify them. Now, we understand that this is a slightly different way that people are used to doing research. So we have many resources available to help people onboard, including documentation, getting started guides, videos, and et cetera. But one of the biggest value things that I've found and that our researchers find is the office hours that we hold. So we staff office hours twice a week with our PhD community engagement managers. You can come and chat with them. They'll help you with any part of your research, whether it's designing a data management and sharing plan or actually using the platform. And this is for all 3 of the platforms that we run. Once a month, on the 3rd Thursday of each month, we do a joint office hours with Kids First and Include. So they send representatives, and then you can really come and ask about any part of the life cycle of your research. Where did the data come from? How did you determine these are the terms that you used? Anything like that. And just to highlight one success story, we have Seth Burke here. He graduated last year from Johns Hopkins University. This paper was published just a couple weeks ago. And he talks about the how and why of bringing his lab's workflows onto CAVATICA and onto the cloud analysis platform. And I just highlighted Eric Tobin as an author because he was a PhD community engagement manager on our team. And while we don't require it or expect it, Seth and his lab felt that Eric's contributions were great enough to warrant an author on this paper. Seth's lab also has used those workflows to publish several other papers talking about results, analyzing data from Gabriella Miller Kids First. And since we've been talking about collaboration and how Seth and Eric work together to get their workflows up there, collaboration is really paramount in the way we build our workspaces. So we've talked about files and analysis, but everything happens in a project space, and you can manage the membership of your project. Managing collaborations when you're at an institution and your data is stored locally can be a challenge, because what if I want to give someone access to that data? How are we going to do that? But here, because we're leveraging the cloud and we're just logging on to this platform, you can add people and manage their permissions on the platform. So read, write, copy, or execute, whatever you need. And the benefit of this is we still check authorization of files, controlled access files, real time. So just because I've added someone to my project doesn't mean they suddenly have access to all of those files. If it's managed through dbGaP, they still have to do a dbGaP application, whether it's their own or in conjunction with mine, depending on how we're affiliated. I won't go too much into the costs of running on the cloud, but again, highlighting that it is different because we're paying for what we use, whereas locally it's often a fixed cost. Our platform is just pass-through costs, but we also, I'll talk about in the next slide, and Tanya mentioned, we have the Strides initiative, which actually makes it cheaper. But I think one thing I want to highlight is that there's two kinds of costs. There's storage costs, and then there's analysis cost. With storage, if you're leveraging public files, you're not paying for that storage because there's a central copy somewhere else. But if you've generated files on your own or uploaded your own files, there is some, but we also have archival methods to reduce those costs if you're keeping them there long term. For analysis, if you're in the Data Studio environment, we have a timeout method so that if you walk away, get coffee, or forget that your script or your instance is running, it'll shut off after a certain period of time. So those costs aren't going to just continue to build up. With workflows, we have spot instance availability, and memoization. So you can get spot instances from these cloud providers at a reduced cost. And then if there's any kind of interruption throughout your workflow, rather than having to start from the beginning, you'll just go back to the last step that was successfully completed, and it can rerun from there. We also have 24-hour support that are monitoring our platform for any errors or anything like that, or if you have a long-running workflow that's hanging, our support team is always taking a look to make sure that we keep those in check. Since we are an ecosystem, partnership is really the name of the game, and we've had this integration with Strides for quite a while. I don't have to get too into it because we've talked about it, but they're really trying to promote that commercial cloud service provider and enabling biomedical research in those environments. And by leveraging CAVATICA or using CAVATICA or the CGC or BiData Catalyst, you get the benefits of that Strides account without having to have your own. If you do, you can bring it, that's great. But you just have to create a login, which takes a few minutes, and then you can leverage those benefits. You also don't need a cloud service provider account. You really just make an account on the platform and use it. In addition to some of those benefits, Strides also offers funding through Include and Kids First through their cloud credit program. And this is intended to support researchers who are either using data from Include or Kids First or building tools that you can use for Include or Kids First data. Pilot funds is really for anyone that wants to come onto CAVATICA and try it out. But if we look to the next levels, there's the first round of application, which it's a very lightweight application, but you have to say what your intended use is. You can get $1,000 to use on the platform, build and test workflows, complete some small analysis, and carry out benchmarking if you're going to do a larger analysis subsequently. For many people, this is enough. They can do what they want to do, and then they move on to publication, presentation, that type of thing. We also see many people that use this as a stepping stone to get to that next level. And depending on whether you're applying through Include or Kids First, what your project is, and who you're collaborating with, you can get anywhere from $5,000 to $20,000. So we've seen large collaborations where multiple PIs are working together, get large awards for these. And it's really just the application is showing that you've tested and you can do it and how much that benchmarking is, so we know what that larger analysis is going to cost. These two programs have been running since 2022 and combined have seen 45 awardees. 2 of them came in last week, which is great. I can add them to the slides. But we've allocated $74,000 in total funding that people have used. And we see a wide array of people that have applied to this program. Some of them are primary data generators. So they've generated data, now it's gone on to the cloud platforms and they want to analyze it for their own use. Some of them are secondary data users, so they haven't added data, but they're just going to Include or Kids First portals, finding data that they're interested in, and then going to go analyze that on the platform. Sometimes it's preliminary analysis in preparation for a larger grant. Sometimes it's supplementary, so they've already done their own research. They want to confirm that their findings are reproducible in another cohort, or they just want to build a larger cohort using some of the data that's available. And then some people are just doing standalone research or tool development. Just before time's up, I have 2 examples, and I apologize for the long text, but I'll try and highlight what's important. These were the project descriptions they gave me, and I wanted to do them justice. Matthew Galbraith is at the Cernic Institute. He's a primary data contributor for Include. He did an immunoassay looking at 54 different immune signaling molecules in about 400 participants, either with or without Down syndrome. All of that data is available on the Include Hub, as well as the scripts that he wrote to analyze that data are available on CAVATICA. He also has a larger project where he's modifying a variant calling workflow to correctly call variants in participants with Down syndrome, because lots of those public workflows were not intended for people with trisomy 21. We also have an example of a secondary data user. So Jinling Liu from the University of Florida went on to the Include portal, found a cohort that she wanted to analyze, and then used a tool that she had built to do individualized Bayesian inference and identify rare and biologically meaningful variants in that data set. So I think for newer researchers or people that are not used to this cloud and data sharing, there's often a question of, well, someone else has already looked at that data, there's nothing new I can find. And we know that's false, right? We've seen many examples, both in our environments and through Cancer Research Data Commons and by Data Catalyst, where publicly available data is mined for new information. And in closing remarks, I just want to say that CAVATICA and the platforms that we build can really help scientists answer their questions in a security compliant platform. The Cloud Credit Program is active, and we're always looking for new researchers. Later, if you're interested in doing research in that area. And the model has been successfully shown across all the platforms that we have. So by Data Catalyst and the NCI Cancer Genomics Cloud have similar programs where they offer both cloud credits and resources to help you get going. And it's, I'd say, a relatively new thing. CAVATICA has been around since 2016, but we see annual growth on our platform. We're a couple years behind the CGC, but every year, these are not cumulative. Every year we get new users and we get more people who are actively using the platform. There's lots of people I'd like to acknowledge. I can't spend the time going through all of them, but the 3 people at the NIH that I work with on the Cloud Credit Program, Wei-Ching Li from NHLBI manages the Include, and then Marcia Fournier and Marie Nieres manage the Kids First Cloud Credit Program. And then we are an ecosystem, so the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, St. Justine builds the data portals where you can go find data, and the Cernic Institute in Colorado really drives forward that Include resources.
Thank you, Jared. Really appreciate it. Your moderator, yours truly, has completely mismanaged the time for this session. So I'm going to get our last speaker up, and hopefully you'll find